So what is content discovery? So what we want to do is to find hidden or private content on a web server that could lead to vulnerabilities. So first, what is content discovery? The idea is to find anything that is not exposed publicly. So anything that is not directly visible on a website, but that is on the web server. So for example, there might be directories in any website /admin for login, or maybe notes, so /notes, or other kind of information like backups. Backups can be very useful also, maybe videos, pictures, or files in general. So the idea is to discover more information. So we're not talking about the obvious things you see directly in the website, but hidden files and folders that might be on the web server. So it could be, for example, login portals that allow you to log into the website, all the versions of the website, configuration files, administration panels, backup files, and stuff like that. So the idea is to discover those. Now you can try that manually. You can do it more automated, and we'll look at that into this course. So first we'll go into manual discovery, and there are many places where we can check manually. For example, many websites have a robots.txt file, and that is a website file for search engines to tell which pages they are not allowed to visit and which pages they are allowed to visit. So let's open that. With any website you can try /robots.txt, and you'll see information. For example, here the directory /no Googlebot is not allowed. All the others are allowed. So that file usually looks something like this, and it can tell you directories that Google's bot or other search engines bots are not allowed to visit, or which directories are not allowed to visit and which are allowed to visit. So it might provide you some information. This file is made for search engines, so robots.txt, and it can be quite common to restrict certain website areas. So for example, from Google, like /admin or WP admin or other directories like that, that the creator of the website doesn't want to be exposed to the search engines. So admin panels or stuff like that. So robots.txt can give you some information on that. And of course, there's many more manual discovery methods. For example, many websites have an icon. So in this case, you'll see a little icon here. And that icon is usually /favicon.icon. Any icon can tell you information about the technology that has been used, or about the website itself, or which app is running. So it can provide useful information how this website is built or what program is running on the website. And there's a lot of these default icons or favicons, and you can check that easily. So if you go to the website wiki.owasp.org /index.php /owasp favicon database. So the OWASP favicon database, you can also find that with any search engine. So if we type that in Google, OWASP favicon database, you can also find the favicon databases. So that's wiki, I think it's here directly in the search and results. wiki.owasp.org. No, sorry. Okay, so it's this URL, and it shows you a list of codes and of the program running. For example, there's a code here for Penguin, for Google Web Server, for Soup as content management system. If you scroll down, there is code for WordPress, a code for status.net, for GitWeb, and all kind of applications, right? And they have all unique codes. So this code is called a hash, and a hash can be created from any favicon. So this code can be created from any favicon that you have, and then you can compare the hashes and find out which program is running on the website or which technology. So how does that work? Well, first we need to download the icon to our computer. So it's usually /favicon.icon. If you're not sure, you can look at the website source. So right click, view page source, and then look at the page for the icon. So you'll see /favicon icon, shortcut icon, and that's how you can find it also. But usually it's /favicon.icon. And what you want to do is to download it. So let me enlarge the font here. Okay, so now we can download that file. So we're gonna copy the URL and download it to our computer. And now what you want to do is to calculate the hash. As you saw here, every icon has its unique hash. And I'm doing that in Kali Linux, so on any Linux computer. If you don't have a Kali Linux computer, you can also do it online, which I'll show in a minute. I'll first show how to do it in Kali Linux. So you can type md5sum with the favicon, and you'll see that generated the hash. Now, if you don't have a Linux computer, you should get a Kali Linux computer because it has many available hacking tools and information gathering tools. So you really want to have Kali Linux because it has all those tools at hand. So if you're not running Kali Linux and you want to calculate the hashes, so those hash codes, you can also do it in your browser. For example, there's Chrome extensions for that. If you look in the App Store for md5sum in Chrome, you'll find an extension for that. For Firefox it's the same. There's an md5sum calculator. So now what I can do is click on the icon, go to Tools, go to this button here, and select my file, and that calculates the md5sum. So if you're not running Kali Linux, which you should, then you can also calculate those hashes using browser extensions. And once you have such a hash, so in this case it's an md5 hash, you can copy it, then go to the OWASP database website, press Ctrl F and press paste, and that will search the website for the hash. So in this case it doesn't find the hash, which means it is not in the database. So if it's not on the database, you can try searching the hash in Google with quotes around it to search it literally, and you might find out also what it's running. So for example here it's running WordPress. You'll see that as one of the results. So ideally you can find out what is running using the icon by calculating its hash. Any website runs on a server. So in this case, what is a server? Server is basically a dedicated computer which is running an application, so that when you ask for your website, the computer gives your website's file back. So you'll see here I have a website. If I press Ctrl+Shift+I and click on network, you'll see what the server is sending you. So all kind of files are transferred to you once you ask for the website. So you ask for the website, and the server, which is an application running on someone's computer, returns all of those files to you. Now, of course, there's different kind of applications with any application. Just like with the web, there's different applications for that. With music, there's different applications for that. Or with graphics programs. So as well with servers, there's different applications for that can give those files back to the users, and different versions of that. So how can you find out which version is running on the server? So let me clear the terminal. You can use a tool called curl on Kali Linux. So type curl with the website address. Let me close this. With the website address with -v, that will tell you the so-called HTTP headers. So that is the protocol that is used on the web. You'll see HTTPS here, the protocol that is used on the web. And by getting those headers, you might find out useful information, such as the programming language that is used, or the server application that is used, which version that is used, and other information which might be vulnerable to attacks. And so the idea is to find out that information. So we type curl with your website target -v, press enter, and they'll show you all the website code, which is not that interesting. But if you scroll up all the way to the to the top, you'll see the HTTP headers. So you'll see you're connected to the website, the protocol that's used, some information about you. So in this case, we're using curl. And this is the response that is directly after that. So that is more interesting. You'll see they accept the version of HTTP, and they'll tell you, okay, they are running Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a Linux system. So that might be very useful, because then you can be more specific with attacks. So is it running a Windows server? Is it running a Linux server? Or maybe something else. So in this case, it returns Ubuntu. So it's running a Ubuntu computer. Ubuntu is a Linux distribution. So if I go to ubuntu.com, you'll see something about open source, blah, blah, blah. And you'll find out that it's actually a Linux system. So in this case, it's running Ubuntu. It tells you Nginx 1.18.0. So if we search for that, you'll see Nginx, okay, nginx.com, and you'll see that Nginx is the web server application. So just by searching, we can find out what is actually the software used as a server application. And then they'll provide some other information like the date and some stuff that is less interesting. So the HTTP header can provide you some information. So Nginx is used as the web server. Now it might be that this version is vulnerable. So we can search for that in exploit-db, exploit-db.com. Then we can find out maybe this is an old version of the server that is vulnerable to attacks. So it is a little slow. Okay, it started exploit-db.com. We can search for Nginx, which is the server application that is used here. Or we can search in Google Nginx site exploit-db.com. And you'll see some vulnerability here and others. So there are vulnerabilities for this server software, however, maybe not specifically this version. So you'll see this says version 1, which is obviously not the version that they use. And you'll see Nginx, okay, there's different Nginx versions here. So they're using version 1.18. And maybe you can find out, for example, there's 1.1.17 here. So it might be that this server software is vulnerable, which you can discover on exploit-db.com. So overall, the HTTP headers are quite useful. Now, if you don't have Linux, you can also find out those headers with your web browser. So if you refresh the web browser, go to Tools, Browser Tools, Web Developer Tools. click on network, refresh, then scroll up, click on the slash, click on response, or click on headers, and you'll also find the same. So you'll see they are running Ubuntu Linux with Nginx. So this is another way to do it using your web browser. So you can also find out which technologies a website uses. So any website can be using different frameworks, content management system, payment processors, and such kind of things, different technologies that is used on the website itself. You can find out that information using a tool called webalizer.com. So that's webalizer.com. And the idea is to just type your website URL, for example, BBC Co UK, and press enter. And let's see which technology they are using on their website. So I'm gonna look for BBC Co UK, and it will tell me all of the specific technologies that are used on Co UK. Now, it might take a moment for the process to complete, but they might, for example, use a content management system. They might have different payment processors in the case of shops. They might run different frameworks, and you'll see it can also run as a browser extension, so you can run it as an extension in Chrome, Firefox, Edge, Safari, and some other services. So a similar site to find that out is buildwith.com, and in buildwith.com you can type a website URL and find out which technologies are used. For example, you can see they are using some analytics and tracking software on the BBC website. So actually a lot of tracking software and analytics. If you scroll down, you'll see Google, besides Google Analytics, a lot of different things. They're using some widgets. So that is things that can be used on the website. So a lot of widgets. Okay, have some language text. They have a cart functionality. They're using different frameworks like Adobe Cloud. They're using PHP programming language or Java. So this website does a best guess on what technologies are used. You'll see some content delivery framework is used, something for mobile, some payment stuff. So you can find out different technologies that are used to build the website. So either do that with buildwith.com, it can provide you that information, or with webalizer.com. And Webalizer is commercial, so they might limit after one search. And with buildwith you can do multiple searches. For example, we can do cnn.com and find out some information on that particular website about which technologies are used. Now, there's also external websites that can help you find information about your target website. So these are often called open source intelligence tools, freely available tools that collect information. One of it is just Google, right? So you can use the advanced search engine features to find out more information about a website. So if we go to google.com, you can search, for example, using the site filter. So site with your target websites, let's say BBC Co UK, and that will just result links containing of the website BBC Co UK. So you'll see different results. Now, this is not the only filter that you can use. So you can use this in combination with more interesting filters. For example, the file type filter. So you might search for specific PDF files, file type :PDF, and now you discover PDF files about that are stored on the website, on the server. So it can be very useful, or maybe you're interested in text files, txt. And you'll see, okay, they have only one text file exposed, the robots.txt. But you can find different file types on the server besides just regular web page using the advanced filters. Now this works for any website, so if you pick another website, let's say CNN.com, you'll see, okay, they have one text file. We can search PDF. You'll see different PDFs that are exposed to the internet, and some of it might not be necessarily like files that should be exposed on the internet. Now you can also search in title, so search the web pages for which titles for web pages that contain a title. So let's say we search for hack. You can find all of the web pages containing the word hack, so in title column. Or if in the URL, if the word should be in the URL, you can type in URL. So those are different filters you can use, and they work on different search engines. So if I go to another search engine, let's say duck.com, and type site .co.uk, site : PDF, then that works as well. In this case, it didn't index any PDFs. If I type site : bbc.co.uk, you'll see links as well. So you might notice that different search engines might index or not index some files. So it can be useful to search with different search engines, because some search engines may remove some of those files, but other from the listing, but other search engines might show those. So it can be useful to search with different search engines to find hidden files. Example, we can search using a Russian search engine. With the same search query. Okay, sorry about that. And you'll see that it also is PDF files. That maybe Google might remove those PDF files from the listing, but then Yandex might show those. So it can be useful to search with different search engines to find out hidden files or that is exposed on the internet. Another useful website is the Wayback Machine. So archive.org/web. That's just archive.org/web. So that is the so-called Wayback Machine or the Internet Archive. And then here you can type any website URL and go back in time to older versions of that website. So for example, you can go all the way back to the 90s for some websites. So we type our target website, and that way maybe we find some information, some useful information, like web pages that have been removed. Might have been there might not be there in the present, but in the past they were. So things that were removed from the website you can find out, or maybe some files that were exposed in the past but not anymore. So using the Wayback Machine, you can go back in time. For example, we go back to 2013, and then it will show you the version of that website in 2003. So you can go back in the time all the way to the 90s for some websites. And you can see older versions of a website, which things that might have been exposed. So this was the 2003 version of and you can browse around. Maybe there's contact information or other information that is not exposed anymore, but is exposed in the past. So you can scroll to the future or the past using this widget on top. So if you click anywhere, you'll see it goes more far into the past to a full version that is even older. Or if you want a newer version, just scroll right and click then scroll, for example, to here and click on it, and you'll go to a more recent version. So using the Wayback Machine, so that's archive.org/web, you can find out different older versions of the website. And this is basically a website that indexes the web all the time. So you can go to any website and go back in time. Maybe there's some PDF files that were exposed in the past, or contact information, names, or other things. So using the Wayback Machine, we might discover that information. Sometimes you can find out useful information on github.com. So it's a version control system that programmers use. It makes it easy to work together with other programmers. So github.com. And if you go to github.com, you can find all kinds of programming projects. So it might be that there's some information about your target website stored on github.com. And there are some other variants of GitHub as well, like GitLab and others. And you can search for a specific website. And maybe the website owner is or the programmers left the versions of that website online. For example, here is waveform.prototyping.bbc.co.uk or bbc.co.uk/programs. So you might find projects of the target websites on github.com and might expose some information. So probably not, but it might be that some files are exposed on the internet of your target website, which then could be useful for targeting the website. So that's github.com. And it's basically a programmer's tool to store their versions of their programming or their current projects. It's a version control system, so it might expose, for example, passwords or usernames. So if I just do a regular search for passwords, some projects they might store the password in their projects, or it can be usernames exposed as well. So if your target website is in there, you can search inside the project for example, password or usernames. It might provide some information, but usually this with github.com you don't have too much success. You can also do automated discovery, which I really recommend doing because it's much more efficient than doing everything manually. And with automated discovery, you can discover hundreds or thousands of things because they're automated. So manually it would take you ages to do that. But with the automated, you can find out different directories or files just automatically that you might not even have guessed. So this process is possible using word lists. So what is a word list? A word list is basically a file, and this file contains a long list of commonly used words. They can maybe different use cases or directories that existed on other websites. There's different word lists for password, for example, password lists for commonly used or frequently used passwords. However, we're looking for content. So there's lists that contain commonly used directory names or commonly used files. Now, for example, on Kali Linux, there's a lot of those word lists included. If I open a file browser and click here, go to the directory user, share, word lists, and you'll find different word lists. So for example, there's the directory dirb and dirbuster. If I go into the dirbuster directory, you'll see different word lists. I can click on it and you'll see words that is commonly used, for example, /index, /images, /download, /news, /contact. So different words that in order to discover content, and you'll see those word lists can get very long. This one is 87,000 words. And the idea is, of course, to discover hidden content. Now there's different word lists. So these are just some of the word lists. There's more word lists here in the dirb directory. Also for other languages, you have word lists, for example, Spanish, and you have a word list for Spanish websites. Now called common, of commonly used words. And the idea is to use that word list to scan any target website for hidden directories using automated tools. So for example, one of these tools is called GoBuster. And with GoBuster, we can scan the target website and try to find out hidden information. So we type, let me just copy the target website URL and make everything smaller to make it more readable. So we'll type GoBuster. It's installed by default on Kali Linux. If it's not installed, just press yes and enter, and that will install it on your computer. So we're installing GoBuster, and this tool lets us scan the website using a word list. So we can type GoBuster, then type dir. We're looking for directories, and -- URL, where we specify the target website. So our target, -- URL, our targets. We need to specify a word list, so /w, user share word lists. And then, for example, dir/b/ perhaps the common word list. And then press enter. And you'll see that will scan the website using that word list. So it will open the word list. Let me open it for you. And it will try everything automatically. So /gt, /zorum, /joop, /zoom, /zones, /zone, and so on. So it will try automatically all those words as a URL and find out if they exist or not. And you'll see GoBuster discovered some directories, for example, /admin, /files, /image. It found robots.txt, it found /secret, /share. So we found some hidden directories on our target website. Now GoBuster is just one of the tools you can use. So another is called dir/b. If I open a new tab, I can type dir/b. And dir/b is similar to the one you saw before. So dir/b, paste the, sorry, I copied the, copied. So we need the target website. dir/b with your target website. And the word list. So with the target word list, press enter, and you'll see it's scanning the website for hidden directories. And you'll see it found 3 hidden directories, and if you scroll up, you'll see those hidden directories. So dir/b is another tool you can use for it. There's also ffuf. So if I open another one, I can type ffuf -v or -w with the word lists. Let's use the same file. And then the -u with your target URL. So again, I copied something. So with the target URL, so the website that you want to scan, and press paste, press enter. And this tool can be used as well for scanning. So this one had some issue. So it can be used as well. So, but I'm usually using dir/b or GoBuster because they always work. So those are different tools you can use to discover content. So the way to use ffuf is to type /fuzz on the end and press enter. And you'll see it found some hidden directories. So I don't like this tool too much. I like dir/b and GoBuster more. But you can find out different hidden directories using this technique as well. So that's -w with your word list, and then /-u with the website URL /fuzz in capitals, and that will hidden directories. So either use dir/b, use dir/b with this command, or use GoBuster with this command. So both of those commands can be used to automatically scan websites for hidden files and directories. So let's do it with dir/b again. So dir/b space the target website and the word list, which is also the easiest to use, this dir/b. Press enter, and you'll see it finds out hidden, or it might find hidden files and directories. For example, it found here the secret directory. So let's open that. So I'm gonna open the secret directory. and you'll see, okay, we find information here that shouldn't have been exposed to the internet about SSH, so we might try to use that information then to connect to the computer. And you see now we're inside the target computer. So sometimes it might expose information on the website that allows you to gain access into a system. For example, in this case, the password, username password is exposed in the /secret directory. So you can use Deerbuster to find that kind of hidden directories and files, or B as well, or the FFUF tool. And it might be that a password and username is exposed, or maybe it's just a username. But when you already know the username, it's less hard to gain access into the system, because then you only need the password. It might be that some files are exposed or backup files. And the idea is to discover that automatically using one of these tools. Besides those two things, or those things, you also need to update your software at all times, because different software can have different vulnerabilities that are fixed, and those can be security updates. So it might be that your system is actually prone to those vulnerabilities, and hackers will use those known vulnerabilities to gain access to your system or to abuse your system. So you want to update your system at all times, which is a bit impractical, because usually you're working and then suddenly this update is breaking your flow. But you can specify a specific time to update your software, like maybe Friday afternoon or something like that, such that it doesn't interrupt your workflow, but at the same time you need those security updates as soon as possible. Because if you don't have those can be exposed. For example, in the past there was a famous attack using the WannaCry software, and the WannaCry software attacked the Windows system and attacked many different countries because they were running old software. So you'll see basically almost all of the world was attacked, and what it did was lock all of their files. So if the victim didn't have backups of their files, not at least 3 backups, different technologies and at different locations, then they wouldn't have access to their files anymore unless they paid the money. So backups are very important. But if they had updated their system also, they wouldn't have that problem, because that security problem was actually resolved. So it's important to update your software to prevent those kind of problems. And also it might be different. This happens on many different systems, so not just on Windows. It can be a Linux system that wasn't updated on time, so the security updates are not there, and then those can be abused. And not updating your software is a problem on all of these software. So it's a security risk on Windows, on Mac, on Linux, and any other system. So for example, here, if we have a Ubuntu Linux system, I can show you that the settings. So if we show you in this Linux system details, you'll see it's Ubuntu Linux 14, which is an old version of the Ubuntu Linux system. And on any Linux system, you can use the sudo command to run things as administrator. So sudo requires you to type a password, but there was a vulnerability in older Linux versions where you can run things as administrator using -u with a -1 flag. So -1 will start the terminal. So this will start the terminal, and this does it as -1. Of course, there is no user -1. Nobody has or user ID -1, right? People have user ID maybe 1, 2, 1000, 1012, but not -1. So this was a vulnerability in old Linux versions, and you see that immediately gave administrator access or root access just using one command. So newer Linux versions don't have that problem. So there can be different vulnerabilities, security risks that have exist in the past that have been resolved, but if you don't update your system, then your system might be at risk for those attacks. So at all times, update your system to prevent those security risks. And you also want to update your antivirus software to prevent commonly known viruses to attack your system. So virus companies often have many different a database of many different viruses, and you want to update that database as well to prevent the latest viruses from attacking your system.